I stood in the darkness of the basement, gripping an old iron pry bar. From the kitchen above came a methodical thud. My son, Julian, was kicking at the oak door. "Mom, don't be a fool!" he yelled. There wasn't a trace of love in his voice, only a hunger for the kill. Miller has already called the orderlies, sign the papers, and you go to a nice quiet room. Resist, and you're leaving in a body bag. I looked down at the cracked concrete floor at my feet. There, in the pit, lay a skeleton I wasn't supposed to know about, and it wasn't my husband. It all started 3 days ago at a roadside diner. Beatrice, my daughter-in-law, slammed a cup of cold coffee in front of me. "Eleanor, you've started talking to yourself," she snapped, dropping a stack of legal documents on the table. "The neighbors are complaining about you wandering the woods at night. You're a danger to yourself. Sign the guardianship over to us, or we'll have a judge declare you incompetent." Beatrice leaned in close, her expensive perfume hitting me like a physical blow. "Understand this, Eleanor. We don't want this farm because of roots. We want the money sitting under it. You're just an old prop that's stayed on stage too long. Sign the papers, and maybe I'll let Julian visit you once a year. On holidays." Julian sat opposite her. He wouldn't look at me. He kept tugging at his tie, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered rat. Suddenly, a waitress approached the table. With a sharp, almost aggressive movement, she shoved a menu into my lap. Something heavy clinked inside it. "Widow's Special," she muttered and vanished into the lunch rush. I looked inside. A heavy craft envelope. Beatrice reached for my bag. "What's that?" I slapped her hand away. Hard. The diner went silent. "Don't you ever touch me," I hissed. For the first time in a year, I saw genuine fear in that hyena's eyes. Back home, I tore the envelope open. Inside was an old key and a yellowed newspaper clipping from 10 years ago. The headline, "Missing Witness in Smuggling Case Still Not Found." In the margins, written in red marker, 2332, he is not in the grave. At 2332, my phone vibrated on the marble counter. No caller ID. I answered. Silence. Then a whisper that made my skin crawl. "Eleanor, they didn't kill me in the crash. They buried me alive under the house. Your son held the flashlight while Beatrice poured the concrete." It was the voice of Arthur, my husband. But the sound wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from beneath the floor. The vibration was rising straight through the floorboards. I hung up. My call log was empty. There was no record of an incoming call. But in the dead silence of the house, I heard it clearly. Thud, thud, thud! Someone was tapping on the concrete from below, from deep within the foundation. I grabbed a pickaxe and bolted for the basement. I had to know what my house was built on. I swung at the concrete, oblivious to the pain in my joints. Every strike vibrated through my teeth, but I was fixated on one thing: the fresh patch on the floor Arthur supposedly repaired. Just before he died, a putrid smell hit me suddenly. Not just dampness, but decay mixed with industrial chemicals. The concrete gave way. Beneath it was a void. I shone my flashlight down and nearly lost my mind. There, in a narrow crawl space, was a landline phone connected to an old cable. Next to it sat Arthur's weathered jacket. But there was no body. Inside the jacket was a simple Bluetooth speaker wired to the phone line. At that moment, the phone in the pit rang. I froze. In the absolute silence of the basement, it sounded like a thunderclap. I picked up. "Did you like the show, Mom?" Julian's voice was hollow, drained of warmth. This wasn't a whisper from beyond. It was a cruel, satisfied laugh. "We knew you'd start digging. You've always been too curious for your own good. Now we have video of you in a full meltdown, ripping apart the structure and arguing with someone no one else can see. For the court, That will look like clear evidence that you're unstable. It clicked instantly. The envelope, the calls, the husband's voice. It was a setup. They were gaslighting me to take the farm without a fight. But they made one mistake. They thought I was just a terrified old woman. I looked up at the hidden camera in the corner of the ceiling and smiled. "Julian," I said softly, "you forgot what your father taught you. Never corner someone who has nothing left to lose." I knew that behind the basement wall was a drainage tunnel leading to the north slope, the same one they used for their dirty business. I didn't go upstairs. I stepped into the darkness of the tunnel. Heavy footsteps pounded above. They had broken into the house. "She's in the basement!" Beatrice shrieked. "Miller, break the door down! She's destroying the evidence!" I ran through the narrow passage, my hands brushing against cold, slimy walls. My flashlight caught crates with the same markings I'd seen in the photos from the envelope. The real envelope hadn't come from them. It was planted by someone else. Someone who actually wanted me to find this place. Elias Thorne was waiting for me in the shadow of the trees. He was the man at the diner. It was his contact in the waitress uniform who gave me the key. Elias was Arthur's partner years ago when they tried to take down the syndicate. He knew Miller was a mole, and he knew I was the only one who could smoke these rats out of their hole. "Sorry for the theater at the diner, Eleanor," he whispered. "You were being watched every second. It was the only way to get the truth to you." The tunnel led to a camouflaged hatch in the woods. I climbed out, gasping for the cold night air. The house behind me was glowing, every window lit like a disturbed beehive. I could see flashlights sweeping across my yard. A figure stepped out from the trees. I raised the pickaxe, ready to kill. "Easy, Eleanor." Elias Thorne pressed a finger to his lips. In his hand was a professional recorder. "I've got their radio chatter. Julian and Miller just confirmed they staged Arthur's accident. They don't need you crazy anymore. They need you gone. Tonight." "Where is Arthur?" I rasped. Elias looked away. "He didn't survive the crash, Eleanor. No, he managed to get the documents to me before his car went over the cliff. He knew his son had betrayed him. I've been waiting for them to expose themselves. Tonight, they signed their own death warrants." A furious scream erupted from the house. Julian realized I'd escaped through the tunnel. "She's in the woods. Find her. I don't need her alive." Elias handed me a heavy object. It wasn't a gun. It was a detonator for the blasting system Arthur had installed in the old mines years ago when he first discovered the smugglers. "Your house is sitting on a powder keg, Eleanor. If they all go into that tunnel at once, we have one chance to close this case forever." I looked at the windows of my home, where the shadows of my enemies hunted for my blood. My son was no longer my son. He was a parasite. "Lure them in, Elias," I said, a freezing rage boiling inside me. "Get them into the basement." Elias nodded and keyed his radio. His voice, faking a panic, crackled through the air. "She's on the north slope. She's got the case. Miller, she's heading for the old road." I watched as the flashlights in the house froze, then swarmed toward the basement. They took the bait. Beatrice, Julian, and Miller, all three went inside, hoping to cut me off in the tunnel. Greed was always their fatal flaw. They couldn't let those documents leave the property. I stood at the edge of the woods, clutching the cold plastic of the remote. The house I'd lived in my whole life now looked like a monster that had swallowed my enemies. Inside were all my memories. Julian's first steps, holidays with Arthur, every happy moment. Now, it was just filth. "Mom!" Julian's voice drifted up from a vent pipe hidden in the roots of an old oak. He was deep in the tunnel now. "We're going to find you anyway. You're going to rot in these woods." I heard Beatrice scream at him from inside the shaft. "Shut up and find the crates. If she blows them, we're dead." In that moment, I realized, even now, on the brink of death, they only thought about the cargo. Not about me standing above them, not about what they'd destroyed. My fingers settled on the button. It was warm from my sweat. Arthur's voice echoed in my head. A home isn't walls, Eleanor. A home is the people inside. There were no people left in my home, only animals. I looked at Elias. He nodded, confirming the tunnel sensors had tripped. They were at the lowest point, right under the contraband cache. Goodbye, Julian, I whispered. I loved you. But the man I loved doesn't exist anymore. I pressed the button. The ground didn't just shake, it heaved. A dull roar, starting deep within the foundation, escalated into a deafening blast. I watched as the north side of the house buckled, then collapsed inward with a hollow thud, dragging the porch and half the kitchen into the abyss. A pillar of dust and smoke billowed higher than the trees. The silence that followed was absolute. No more shouting, no more heavy boots. Only the sound of settling concrete and the distant wail of sirens Elias had called in. We stood there, staring at the ruins. Elias stepped closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. The FBI will be here in 10 minutes, he said. They have everything. The recordings, the smuggling logs, the evidence of Arthur's murder, and the attempt on your life. It's over, Eleanor. I sat down on a fallen log. There were no tears, just a strange, cold emptiness. My home was gone. My family was destroyed. But for the first time in a year, I felt like I could actually breathe. What now? I asked, watching the first gray streaks of dawn bleed into the sky. Now, you live, Elias replied. Arthur left you accounts no one knew about. You can leave. Get far away from here. I looked at my hands. They were bloodied, skin scraped raw, with dirt and concrete dust packed under my nails. But I knew this land no longer held its poison. The truth was out. And though the price was everything I owned, the debt was paid. When the first cruisers pulled into the gravel drive, I didn't hide. I stood up and walked toward them, straight through the morning mist. I knew what lay ahead. Depositions, trials, and the hushed whispers of neighbors. But I knew something else, too. I am Eleanor Hayes. I survived my son's betrayal and my husband's death. And now, no one will ever make me stay silent again. The old farm stayed behind me, a scorched monument to human greed. I walked into the morning, knowing that revenge wasn't the end of the road. It was just the final step before starting over.